Well, everyone, there's a new hand in town, and you don't want to know where his hands have been. From trying to tell two Erics apart, getting mad at your husband uncle for murdering a child, and the fate of this dog. Episode 2 has a lot of pent-up emotion. God's help us all. In this video, we'll be taking a deep dive into the episode, exploring its lore and connection to the book. But fear not, there will be no book spoilers beyond this episode. And before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe. Your support is the only thing getting me through this civil war. Director Claire Kilmer starts the episode with a blur, mimicking the panic, chaos, and uncertainty of the night's events. It's not clear what's happening until we rack focus on the bloody sheets of Prince Jaehaerys. Hired assassins Blood and Cheese have successfully severed his head and fled the castle, using the same secret passageways of Maegor's tunnels. In the behind the scenes of episode 1, you can watch as production constructed their very own multi-million-dollar sewer complete with running water. I guess it beats doing this on location. Daemon told Blood and Cheese he needs a head as proof of their mission's success, at which time they would be paid the remainder of their fee. Unfortunately for them, they'll never see their payday. Upon learning of the prince's death, the gates to King Landing are closed, with Blood caught carrying the prince's head. This will allow the Silent Sisters to stitch the head back onto its body for the funeral procession. The castle's denizens are rounded up in the middle of the night as guards search for the perpetrators, a tactic used by the Greens the night Viserys died to separate those loyal to them from not. A distraught King Aegon unleashes his anger out on his father's model of Old Valyria, a physical representation of him destroying the legacy of his father. For the most part, King Viserys was pragmatic, rational, and enjoyed learning from history to make wise decisions on how to rule the Seven Kingdoms. Aegon is the opposite. He is rash, unpredictable, and wholly unprepared for the job. King Viserys never intended Aegon to be king. This is why he had Rhaenyra attend meetings of the Small Council at such a young age, to learn the intricacies and nuances of rule, even if it meant cracking the occasional joke from time to time. I believe you might be looking up the wrong end. Aegon himself never wanted to become king. He ran away because he knew he wasn't suited for the responsibilities it entailed, but ultimately learned to embrace it because, for once, he was finally loved by someone. In the book, Aegon doesn't want to become king either, but reluctantly takes the mantle after being told by Criston Cole and others that if he doesn't take it, Rhaenyra will assassinate him for fear he'll be a threat to her rule. Last episode, we saw how Hand of the King Otto Hightower and Queen Dowager Alicent Hightower continued to conspire on how to best puppeteer their king as the kingdom sits on the precipice of war. But the death of Jaehaerys will rouse Aegon so deeply neither his mother or grandfather can keep him in check. As Aegon destroys the decades-long work of his father, he is simultaneously destroying his father's decades-long work of keeping the peace. Aegon wants war. He says the line, "They castrated me," referring to killing his only legitimate son and heir to the throne. Back in season 1, it was rumored that Aegon had bastard children, some of whom were slaves at the fighting pit. Then there's the curious case of Maelor, Aegon and Helena's third child. In the book, he's about 2 years old and is in the room during the events of Blood and Cheese. It looks as though the show has done away with him, as Aegon makes no mention of Maelor being next in line now that Jaehaerys has died. Prince Aemon returns to his chambers to find the coins he had placed on his table missing. This is what makes him think the assassins were originally targeting him, something he'll disclose to the brothel madame. You might remember her from season 1. Aemon's vulnerability is shown here as he talks about his feelings while being physically vulnerable, completely naked. Even his eye patch is removed, showing just how comfortable he is around this woman. I don't think his betrothed wife at Storm's End will like this very much. He even says he regrets what happened with Luke and that he simply lost his temper, all of this stemming from years of teasing he faced as a child. Last episode, he called his mom a fool for still holding love for their enemy. So what does that make him showing regret for them? Meanwhile, Otto vows to Alicent that the culprits will be found, but Alicent can't help but think this is all her fault.
The gods punish us. They punish me.
Otto does not know that she's referring to her secret hookups with Criston Cole. Alicent will later try to tell her father of her transgressions, to which he says,
"I do not wish to hear of it."
While Aegon rages and Alicent laments, Otto's mind is focused on how they can turn the situation into something good. By killing Jaehaerys, Daemon has given Team Black a tremendous gift. With houses wavering on which side to join, surely the death of a child will spur the lords of Westeros to their side. Those who declared for Rhaenyra, will they still support her when they hear of her depravity? And what better way to show the royal family's sorrow than holding a public funeral procession so the small folk can share in the grief of the kingdom's loss? Jaehaerys will do more for us now than 1,000 knights in battle. All Aegon has to do is wait for this to unfold, and he may yet double his strength. Helaena is opposed to this idea. She wants to mourn alone and not in front of all the people.
I don't want them closer. I don't know them.
It really paints a picture of how the crown sees the people as tools for their own gain rather than subjects to be taken care of.
Their wants are of no consequence.
There's great consequence if you expect more than one day.
Alicent says this is their duty, harkening back to the words of Cregan Stark in episode 1, that duty eclipses all things, even blood. And check out Helaena holding onto the blanket she was sewing for Jaehaerys last episode. It will now become his funeral shroud. With Helena's premonition that something bad was going to happen with the rats last episode, some may argue she was subconsciously preparing the shroud ahead of his death. Tempers run high at Aegon's emergency meeting of the small council. Aegon wants to know where his Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Criston, was last night. He states he was in bed. That's true, just not his own. Then Aegon turns his ire to his mother, who always had sympathies for Rhaenyra, the woman now accused of coordinating this attack. It is Lord Loras, the Master of Whispers, who announces the capture of Blood, and paranoia seeps into the king's head that other traitors could be in their midst. Initially, Aegon does not want the death of his son to be revealed to the public, for fear of being seen as weak. And to prove he's not weak, and without consulting his hand, Aegon orders the death of all of the city's ratcatchers, knowing that one of them is the murderer of his son. This rash decision completely upends the advantage they had, with many of the small folk now cursing the king's name. The book never depicts this as an order done behind the hand's back, nor does it mention Otto's anger at his grandson's decision, but it certainly sets up his eventual dismissal as Hand. This was hinted at last episode when Loras took Aegon aside and implied that a new king should have a new hand. I found it interesting that the king would not join his mother and wife in the procession. Perhaps it is not safe, considering if something were to happen and he died, he no longer has an heir to take the throne, making Rhaenyra's claim that much stronger. The procession is guarded by a mix of Hightower and Targaryen guards. The people mourn the prince's death as a man at the front urges the small folk to see what Rhaenyra, the pretender to the throne, has done. And it's gotta be an interesting experience for Helaena, who watches these people weep for a child and mother they know nothing of. Among the crowd is a woman named Kat, who will find is the wife or lover of Hugh, the blacksmith who petitioned the king for extra coin in crafting more scorpions, these giant ballista used to fend off dragons. I can't be sure if these two are married, considering neither of them wear wedding rings, nor if this is his sick daughter. In fact, we can't even be sure this Hugh is Hugh Hammer from the book. Correct me if I'm wrong, but his last name has yet to be revealed, and his IMDb credit has him simply listed as Hugh. If this is indeed Hugh Hammer, then the show has made significant changes to his character. When we first meet Hugh in the book, he's on Dragonstone and has no wife. Perhaps this change is to set up his character as a struggling family man, while simultaneously showing us the dire situation among the small folk. Rhaenyra's blockade of the Gullet has blocked off trade to the city, and the people are starting to go hungry. Poor Helaena has a breakdown when the crowd surrounds her funeral carriage. She just lost her son, never wanted to do this in the first place, and her own husband simply walks past her down the staircase without offering any form of compassion or condolence. The death of Jaehaerys comes as a surprise to Rhaenyra, whose only line last episode was that she wanted Aemond, not Jaehaerys, not anyone else. Now the entire realm thinks she's a child murderer. Among her Black Council is Maester Gerardus, Lord of Bartimos Celtigar, her Master of Coin, Lord Alfred Broom, Rhaenys, and Daemon. There's a great shot of Rhaenys staring down Daemon after Rhaenyra explains she'd never inflict pain on an innocent, but she knows Daemon certainly would. Daemon demanded Rhaenys' aid in taking King's Landing last episode. She knows Daemon would do shit behind the queen's back. Sir Alfred Broom also suggests that Rhaenyra may have ordered this in her grief, so let's keep our eyes on him. Rhaenyra confronts Daemon in private, in which he defends himself, stating that the plan was only for Aemond. Last episode, Cheese asked him what they should do if they couldn't find Haemon, and the scene cuts before we get an answer. Daemon's use of the line, "a son for a son," makes this all the more ambiguous. Technically, we have no proof he ordered the slaying of Jaehaerys, but since he said a son for a son, there's a bit of a gray area. Daemon's treachery serves up years of distrust within Rhaenyra.
Cannot trust you, David.
I've never trusted you, totally. She believes he's a man who looks after none but himself and has been using Rhaenyra as a tool for his stolen inheritance. Remember that as Viserys' younger brother, Daemon would be king if Viserys never had a son or named Rhaenyra as successor. Daemon fires back, claiming that Viserys made Rhaenyra his successor not because of her wisdom and virtue, but because he was afraid of what Daemon would do if he were to sit on the throne. He believes Rhaenyra is a fool who will take after his coward brother because she is too afraid to spill blood to achieve greatness. The scene ends with Daemon once again claiming that the death of Jaehaerys was a mistake as he takes off on his dragon. Even Rhaenyra is not sure where he has gone or if he will come back. Jace believes Daemon is off to Harrenhal, which at this time would be under control of Lord Simon Strong, who has pledged allegiance to Aegon. This would mean the perfect opportunity for Daemon to unleash his rage, and Harrenhal is of strategic importance to both Rhaenyra and Aegon. If Daemon were to take Harrenhal, it would certainly be a grand gesture in earning back Rhaenyra's trust. And grand gestures are no stranger to Daemon. He won the stepstones in his brother's name to win back his trust.
If we can take Harrenhal on, they will be forgiven.
Rhaenyra tasked Baela, Daemon's eldest daughter, with taking her dragon Moondancer to keep an eye on King's Landing. This is something Jace offered to do at the Black Council, but was denied. Perhaps she doesn't want her own son and heir to the throne, putting his life in danger. The dismantling of poor Jaehaerys' bed and seeing the bloody sheets hits Criston Cole hard. He knows deep down he wasn't there to protect the future king because he was boinking the queen. Rather than take any of the blame, Criston sets his sights on Ser Auric, whose allegiance is called into question considering his twin brother, Ser Eric, defected to Rhaenyra. Auric was with Aegon the night of the murder, which is definitely more than Criston can say. Auric even questions why the queen was offered no sworn protector. As commander of the Kingsguard, Criston has really been dropping the ball. If he's this bad at leading the Kingsguard, how bad will he be as Hand of the King? Criston has essentially made Ser Auric the scapegoat, telling him if he doesn't go to Dragonstone and slay Rhaenyra, then he will go to the king and accuse Auric of being a traitor to the crown. It's really a no-win situation, and the book tells us that the night before he was to leave, Ser Auric prayed for forgiveness to our mother above. This scene has some amazing blocking that conveys the paranoia that Rhaenyra's spies are always watching. Or watch as Ser Auric looks nervously as the servant walks past them as they go about their plans. Rhaenyra overlooks her two children she's had with Daemon. There's Aegon the Younger, not to be confused with this Aegon, and Viserys II, named after her father. We saw them briefly in Season 1. I like how she hands over a toy dragon just like baby Aegon played with as a child. Alicent asks Criston if he's told anyone about their affair. The man is no fool in this regard. As far as we know, the only person who knows of this is Helaena, who, when asked about it by her mother, refused to talk about it. It's sad to see how hypocritical Alicent is, considering in Season 1 she saw herself as this paragon of virtue, often chastising Rhaenyra for her promiscuity. The same is true of Criston, who denied Rhaenyra's proposal of being his lover, for he did not want to be the queen's whore. But ironically, that's exactly what he's become. While Helaena may keep Alicent's secret safe, the same cannot be said of her maids. Last episode, we learned that Loras replaced her handmaids with ones loyal to the crown, which is basically his way of saying loyal to him. They will no doubt be relaying what the queen is up to, and I wouldn't be surprised if he already knows what's going on. We even see a maid walk past Criston after drawing the queen a bath. Check out Baela practicing her skills with a crossbow. I would not be surprised if we'll see her using one later in the season. Baela and Jace are betrothed, and in the book have been since the age of 4. The two talk about their fathers, with Baela admitting she's scared of hers. When she asks about Harwin Strong, it implies she knows that Harwin is Jace's real father and not Laenor. This episode introduces us to Adam of Hull, the older brother of Alan who we met last episode. Adam believes Corlys should have assigned Alan to sail with him. After all, he did save his life because
To serve with a sea snake is to make your fortune.
But here's the line I find most interesting.
But brother, he owes you. He owes us.
I can't get into too many details without spoilers, but if you've read the book, you know what he's referring to. There's even a clue when we see Adam watching a dragon in the distance. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I've always been bad at telling the dragons apart from a distance, but this looks to be Seasmoke, Laenor's dragon who went MIA after Laenor's escape to Essos. Back on Dragonstone, Rhaenyra picks up a book that depicts Aegon's conquest. We'll see a picture of him here with his two sister wives, Visenya and Rhaenys. The next page shows Queen Visenya riding Vhagar, just to give you an idea of how old she is. The text recounts the First Dornish War, in which Princess Miriam Martell, also known as the Yellow Toad of Dorne, was forced from her throne only for her to come and take it back. Perhaps Rhaenyra sees some analogies with her own situation. Tales of Dorne have long been stories that have interested Rhaenyra. In Season 1, we see her recount the story of Princess Nymeria, who conquered Dorne and would remain its unquestioned ruler for almost 27 years. Criston Cole is of Dornish descent, which may also explain her initial attraction to him. There's this very awkward conversation between Mysaria, the White Worm, and Rhaenyra. Mysaria was a former lover of Daemon's, and now Rhaenyra is married to him. The two actually met way back in Season 1. Rhaenyra wants to know what role Mysaria played in the death of Jaehaerys, to which she discloses the deal she made with Daemon, 2 names, blood and cheese, for the price of freedom. Rhaenyra will end up believing Mysaria and honoring Daemon's deal. This proves to be a life-saving decision, because if Mysaria hadn't seen the imposter Eric arrive ashore, she wouldn't have been able to run back and alert the real Sir Eric of this treachery. In other words, if Rhaenyra hadn't let Mysaria go, she surely would have died. If you're like the Queen, you may also have been curious where Mysaria got this scar. Neither the show nor book has an answer, but the most likely theory is that it was from a collar during her time as a slave. When she was with Daemon, she often covered her neck with capes or jewelry. The body of Cheese hangs outside the castle with his poor dog at his side. Maybe he'll find a better owner. In the book, it is said no trace of Cheese was ever found. Pieces of Viserys' model are taken away. It's crumbling analogous with the crumbling of the kingdom. Otto is furious at the king's rash decision to murder all the ratcatchers, showing no reservation in saying what he really feels. And my grandson is a fool! He's worse than a fool! In addition, Otto hears of the insane plan to have Sir Eric's twin brother murder Rhaenyra. But as king, Aegon has the full authority to do whatever he wants. After all, Viserys made him king.
He made me king. Does that make you sick?
Viserys didn't make him king. It was only through the political maneuvering of Otto and Alicent. Otto's line could even be interpreted in much more nefarious ways, and it is this line that spurs Aegon to relieve Otto as Hand and name Sir Criston in his place.
My new hand will be a steel fist.
If Criston is as bad a hand as he is commander of the Kingsguard, this will be ruinous for Team Green. Rhaenyra prepares for bed wearing this House Arryn blue nightgown. Her mother Emma was of House Arryn, and like her, she has now lost 2 children. Member of the Queen's Guard, Sir Lawrence Marbrand, is relieved of his duty by the imposter Eric, allowing him access into the Queen's chambers. However, the real Eric is just in time to save the Queen's life. The book has several accounts of what actually happened here. In fact, in the book, the Queen is never in any real danger as the fighting happens in the courtyard and not in her chambers. Grand Maester Munkin says the 2 brothers fought for an entire hour, with the 2 dealing mortal blows to one another, dying in each other's arms as tears ran down their cheeks. The Fool Mushrooms account states that Eric cut his brother's arm straight off, but was wounded when Auric grabbed his cloak and plunged a dagger into his gut. It would take Sir Eric 4 days of pain and agony to die of his wound. Both men have no choice but to fight because they are bound by duty, making Kragen's line that duty eclipses blood even more evident. Sir Eric ends up the victor. You can actually tell the 2 apart by knowing which one has the stab wound on the right leg. The one with that wound was protecting Rhaenyra, so you know that's Eric. Although Eric might have been victorious in this battle, he failed at making sure the Queen was safe, and thus he commits Game of Thrones seppuku and takes his own life. Otto tells Alicent that now he has been exiled from the council, he can no longer stay in the city. He has no intentions to return to Old Town, where Alicent's youngest son, Darren, who we haven't seen yet, resides. But Alicent suggests his skills are better used elsewhere. He should go to the Tyrells at Highgarden, whose support has been wavering as of late. Alicent will try to cool Aegon down, and maybe in time Otto will be brought back to the council. Alicent finds Aegon crying. He has just lost his son, fired his grandfather as Hand, and ordered the execution of countless men. But the really interesting thing here is that instead of comforting her son, she just leaves. Notice him playing with his ring, something Rhaenyra would often do when she was anxious. That sly dog Kristen is already waiting in Alicent's chambers. She slaps and pushes him, expressing her anger. Remember, she thinks it was her sins that caused Jaehaerys' death, and yet she can't quit the man she committed them with. A few moments ago, she was consoling her father for getting fired, and now she's making out with the man who took his job. I wonder what Aegon will think when he finds out his hands have been in his mom. Episode 2 is a slower-paced edition that mainly dealt with the aftermath of Prince Jaehaerys' death, but with the two sides rallying their men and tensions rising across the realm, fire and blood are soon to spill. But what did you think of the latest episode? I want to hear your thoughts and theories in the